Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Calgary's Business. Joining me today is Franco Terrazzano, who is Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Thanks for joining us today, Franco.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
All right, so big news in the city of Calgary these days is the tax situation as people receive their property taxes. What have you been hearing about the responses from the citizens of Calgary regarding their taxes?
Well, I've heard two things loud and clear. The first is that Calgarians are frustrated, and the second is that this is going to hurt. Many families were already struggling before the tax hike, but the tax hike, while so many Calgarians have been losing their jobs, it's going to make the tough times much tougher for many families. And even before the tax hike, I heard from many Calgarians who are worried about their financial future, whether that's their next grocery bill, whether that's their life savings. But now they have to worry about how they are going to afford higher taxes. And I think the most frustrating part for Calgarians is that they know that they're paying higher taxes because City Council for many years has been unwilling to cut wasteful spending. So people are frustrated and they have every right to be frustrated. I mean, imagine losing your job and being worried about your economic future. And then you go into your mailbox, you open it up and you see a big tax hike in there. And you know that your taxes are paying for things like $100 million corporate slush fund, 2 pensions for the mayor, gold-plated pensions for city councilors, and then hundreds of city employees who are getting 2 or 3 pensions. So what's clear from this is that City Hall right now has really been unwilling to share in the tough times and make things a little bit easier for families.
Let's talk about numbers. Okay, first of all, what is the average property tax increase that you've been hearing in Calgary?
For residential, it's been about 7.5% tax hike.
Okay, and what has that number grown in the last few years by?
Well, so one of the claims that the mayor has said with his property tax hike is that residential taxes have stayed within inflation plus population growth. Well, we ran the numbers at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and turns out that number is misleading. Residential taxes since the end of 2014 have increased by over 20%, which is higher than inflation and population growth. And in fact, if residential taxes just merely increase with inflation and population growth, well then over $200 million less would have been taxed from residential property taxpayers.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the expenses. Can you talk a little bit about that and the fact that that seems a little out of whack, I guess?
Well, the key issue is that we're all paying higher taxes because the City of Calgary, the councillors, they've been unwilling to cut back their budget. And, everyone has been struggling because of COVID-19. But the truth of the matter is that Calgary's struggles go back much further before COVID-19. We've really been struggling since the end of 2014. And since the end of 2014, countless families, countless businesses have had to tighten their belts. They've had to trim the excess in their budget. But we haven't seen that from city councilors. And we've heard the mayor claim that he's found hundreds of millions of dollars in savings or cuts. But, we fact checked that again. And it turns out that the city's budget has increased every single year since the end of 2014.
Do you think Calgarians have reached the boiling point and they can't take this any longer in terms of this present city council?
Well, I think Calgarians are extremely frustrated. I really do think they are. And I think from what I've been hearing, one, it's just, they need some relief. People are struggling, right? People are so worried about their financial futures, and they just need some help, and they need to see city council willing to share in the tough times. And they haven't seen that. They haven't seen it at all. And you can look just with the crazy benefits that are completely detached from reality outside of City Hall, where you have your mayor, who's supposed to be the leader right now, who still has 2 pensions. And he's the only mayor of a big city in Canada who is eligible to receive 2 pensions. And the next point of frustration from Calgarians is that they just feel like they're not being listened to. If you look at the most recent city satisfaction survey, more Calgarians demanded spending cuts versus tax hikes. And what are they getting? Well, they're getting tax hikes. They're not getting spending cuts.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, thanks for joining us today, Franco.
Well, it was a pleasure to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Franco Terrazzano, who is Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on Calgary's Business. Thanks for joining us today.